like to call the October 2nd, 2024 Town Board meeting to order. Ms. Marco, please call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Present.
Mr. Mastriani?
Present.
Mrs. Galucci?
Present.
Mr. Schlag?
Present.
And Mrs. Collins?
Present.
5 present.
Okay, a quorum is present. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Mrs. Galucci, will you please lead us? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think you ladies know, since you're really the only ones here tonight, but you did sign up if you want to speak, right? Okay, good. And the only other thing is, during our agenda session, we did add another resolution that you folks don't have, but it's basically just putting on 2 budget workshops for us. All right? And also, if anyone wants a copy of the budget, they are up here. They're back to back, the tentative budget, I'm sorry. You can grab one on your way out, okay? All right. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Kathleen Conboy?
Had to be one of 2, right? I have a few questions that I know you will answer at some point. Who prepares the budget is one of my questions. And in conjunction with that, these ARPA funds, is that $475,000 already spent for a piece of land out in the middle of nowhere that we may or may not develop at some point? So that has to be used for that purpose. Because I was going to suggest there might be other ways we could use that money that would be very helpful to our budget. And I have a question about this Amendment 1 to the agreement with KB Engineering. What is the purpose of the amendment, and is this something new that we're adding? I see that the terms were met in, let's see, the summer, June 26th, the work was completed, and then the town requested additional services September 21st. So I'm kind of wanting a little background on that. Anything that has to do with Whispering Pines, I must admit my antenna go up, because I was afraid to go on vacation at the end of June, because that's when our closing was going to be, last June. And here we are at the end of, well, we're into October. So, it says they need to prepare and submit startups for each pump, so I guess the pumps aren't started up yet at the pump stations. They will bill as they go, so it sounds like it's going to take a while. Tell me I'm wrong about all this, and I'll be happy. I guess that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, Kathleen Conboy, 120 Fabian Drive.
Thank you, Kath. That's it.
Okay. All right, since there's no one else who signed up for it, I'm closing the public hearing.
No.
I'm sorry, privilege of the floor. Can't keep me up past my bedtime. We'll move on to resolutions. First resolution is Resolution 378 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
The presentation by the town clerk of the 2025 tentative budget to the town board.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Thanks so much.
Jacks, there's Terry's, and there's yours.
I mean, obviously, I know most of you might have seen it already, but that's why we're having the budget meetings. It's a lot to digest at a single glance.
Yes.
But is there any discussion before we move on to a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 379 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To appoint Ashley Veely to the position of deputy court clerk.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 380 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To negotiate and execute an agreement with GPI for construction administration services for the Rotterdam Senior Center generator project.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Galucci. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 381 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To authorize the purchase of 1 brush truck for the Highway Department.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Schlag. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 382 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To amend Resolution 296-21 relating to the use of ARPA funds.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, wait, I'm sorry.
Ron.
Yep, so the motion was made by Mr. Dodson, second by Mr. Schlag. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
I just want to make clear to Ms. Convoy's comments, this resolution does itemize what the federal ARPA fund money has been used for since it was granted during the COVID years. And that did go to purchase parkland for the town. But this resolution simply is an expenditure of $40,000 that will be used to help pave the parking lot at the senior center. So just to clarify that, my vote is yes.
Mr. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 383 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To authorize an agreement with FCM Engineering PLLC for professional engineering construction support and observation services for the Rotterdam Senior Center parking lot improvement.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 384 of the year 2024, the clerk will read.
To negotiate and execute Amendment Number 1 to an existing agreement with KB Engineering and Architect PC Prime AE for professional engineering services related to the sewage pump station supervisory control and data acquisition SCADA improvements.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. This is the resolution we added during the agenda session. It's resolution number 385 of the year 2024. The clerk will read.
To schedule budget workshop sessions for the 2025 tentative budget.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Galucci. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Galucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schlag?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. And that concludes our resolutions for this evening. Do any of the board members have anything they wish to say under liaison reports? Okay, does anybody have anything they wish to say under miscellaneous?
Yes, I'll follow up on the KB Engineering. That's an amendment for $3,100, and it's actually to do the SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition. It allows our operators not to be at the station and get alarms and it is for Whispering Pines and for our Carmen Road sewage lift stations.
Oh, everybody. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to answer your question on the budget is like a whole town-wide process. Every department submits what they feel their budget should be for that year, for that department, what their needs are gonna be for that year. That all gets submitted to pretty much the comptroller's office and Molly and Jack, and they all try to make it balance and budget and make sure that tax cap isn't over and see what they can meet for those departments in that year to budget for that for the next year, as well as capital improvements and everything else involved in that. So it is a lengthy process that poor Molly has to stare at numbers all day, every day for months on end. But it's a group effort, the budget. It's really is for the town. It's a process. That's why over the next couple of weeks, you're going to see us having these special board meetings to do budget presentations. Then we present the preliminary budget to the town. That's what goes to a public hearing. If there's any changes to the preliminary budget to the final, that's made between that public hearing and the final adoption, which has to be done in the first 3 weeks of November. So you can submit it to the state and not be beyond your deadline. Yeah. So that's the general answer to your budget question.
Thank you.
I want it noted that anyone of the public can attend the budget meetings, but you're not allowed to speak. But you can sit here, and it's all the board members, and some department heads will also come in if they're lobbying for something that wasn't in the budget. You're allowed to come in and listen to the process. You just can't speak at a budget workshop. Okay? And then, of course, you can speak at the public hearing to say whatever you'd like to say. The other thing that I'd like to mention is this Friday, we're going to have the Fall Festival. It's from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Grand Central Station will be playing again from 5:30 to 8:30. We have hay rides, a free hay ride to go on. And we have crafts for the children. And we have some food trucks in case you want to eat while you're here. We have donations. And I want to say that not only have the businesses around town donated pumpkins and mums and corn stalks and everything else, but always our board members and even our employees that will gladly pitch in if they see that something is needed, because any of the fall festival, the tree lighting, anything that we have here to encourage community, we don't want that to come out of taxpayer money. And so I really should say that the businesses in the area always step up and help us out, and so do the board members, and so do our employees too. So I hope everybody comes this coming Friday and really has a good time. Anybody else?
Weather forecast looks good.
It does look good for Friday. My nieces love this festival. They went last year.
Good. Okay. Anyone else have anything else? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to close the meeting, to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mrs. Gucci, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson, all in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen.